Welcome to the Seek Coaching International Coach Mentor Community weekly Sunday conference call. We think this call is going to be just over 30 minutes. Thank you for joining us. And there will be an opportunity for you all to share on the call if you want to, but if you're just phoning in and listening in today, that's completely fine as well. The intention of this call is to look at a common issue that we have in our lives and to share some of the coach mentoring technologies or the distinctions of coaching or the distinctions of transformation to see how we can overcome some of these issues. And also, we look at to see what the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, what guidance is being given to us. So, as always, we look at what are the current issues that we're having and dealing with within Seek Coaching in our clinic. What kind of coach mentoring issues are there? And then we look at a scenario, and we then look at the distinctions that are available. So, as always, we see people, families coming in with complaints. Every family has complaints. Every relationship has complaints. And one of the complaint lists that came into our coaching recently was, why are you not working when you're at home? Why are you not looking after the kids properly? Why are you always sleeping? Why are you not paying attention? Why is there no real relationship with anyone in the home? And so usually when an individual, like a wife or a husband or a child or a parent or an uncle or an aunt, whenever we get complaints like this, our response to a complaint is no, 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 no. Like that. We don't accept the complaint. Somebody says, why have you, not washed the dishes? And we say, well, we've got brilliant excuses. First thing we do is we come up with an excuse. Oh, I've not been very well, or my leg was hurting, I've been busy at work. We've got so many excuses why. And so had come to the house, and I was taking care of this and taking care of that. We actually don't understand why the person's complaining, and also, so in both sides, there's a complainer, and then there is a recipient of the complaint. So let's have a look at what happens here. Because what if, when there are 5 complaints like that, what if on our lapel there was a badge that says yes, 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 yes? In Punjabi, we have a word called Sat Bachan. And Sat Bachan means true instructions. Whatever you say is true. Welcome to the call. Thank you for joining us. So Sat Bachan Sadhu Upadesh is what the Guru Granth Sahib Ji says in Sukhmani Sahib. And rarely does anybody ever say Sat Bachan to a request or a demand or a complaint. Rarely does anybody trust somebody else as if it's as if the instruction or the complaint is from a holy person. Because trust is missing, we tend never to say Sat Bachan. If somebody's asking us for something in a request, and especially in a demand, we don't want to accept it. We decline it. Okay, so let's just continue to look at this. What would it take? So what we get is somebody complains, why have you not washed the dishes? When somebody continues to make complaints like this, beginning with the word why, you should have washed the dishes is another complaint. You should have done this, you should have done that. Immediately you'll notice that there is a make wrong by the person that's complaining. And then in coaching, there is a distinction called already, always listening. So the person that's listening to the complaint builds up an already, always listening for this person to be a complaint. So when you're doing complaining, if you persistently continue to complain and complain and complain, you become the complaint. The doer becomes the complainer. The doer of complaints becomes a complaint themselves, and it becomes their natural disposition. So this recursive complaint. Now, why would somebody continue to complain and complain and complain about the same thing? Now, it doesn't mean that we should not ever complain, because complaints are very valuable. Complaints invite conflict, which has an opening for a new possibility when there is a conflict. A breakdown in conflict can create a breakthrough. Also, complaints invite dialogue. Otherwise, that person is sitting with that complaint in their head, whizzing around and around as a obsessive, compulsive conversation in the head. And they may develop a headache, they may get very unwell, they can't sleep and all that. And one day, they have the courage to launch their complaint and say, I'm really angry about this. And what we immediately do, especially as elders or parents, we might say to a child, be quiet. Don't speak. How dare you speak back to me? You shouldn't speak to your elders. Do not complain. You know? So it's very unhealthy to block complaints, but it's also very unhealthy if nobody listens to a complaint. If a complaint is left unheard and without compassion, then that complaint will persist. If the complaint is heard with a dialogue, and there's a soundboard there for the complaint, it gives the complaint existence in dialogue. And if the complaint is written down, or it's drawn, or it's painted, or it's kind of like given a place on paper, then that complaint no longer lives in that person's head. You know, we tend to keep everything in our head because we are meaning-making machines. We jump to conclusions very often, and that conclusion sits in our head. And when we go to sleep at night, it turns up and shows its ugly head in a nightmare or a dream. And we wake up and we say, I keep having this dream, I don't know why. Now the complaint is buried deep inside under our skin, and it could come up as an eczema or a skin issue even. It can show up in, we start losing our hair, and it impacts our digestive system and all sorts of things because it's withheld. Now, when complaints lead to anger, they can lead to anxiety, depression. They can lead to having an amygdala hijack. Therefore, our ability and freedom to express complaints is very, very important. Now, when somebody complains so much that they actually become a complaint, they enter the house from coming back from work or school, they open the door, and immediately the family knows what this person is going to say. Because there's an already, always automated listening for this person. And they might not even have that complaint on their tongue, but we're expecting that complaint to be revealed. Now, in Seek Coaching, we declare that what if humans were open to positive feedback, inviting acknowledgement and complaint, and therefore a win-win is possible. So what's the pattern? Before I open the floor to yourselves to maybe give us your ideas here, the pattern is, imagine that there's an action that needs to be done. For instance, the dishes need to be washed, the roof is leaking, the car tire pressure needs to be corrected, you've had a puncture and it needs to be fixed. There's usually on some action, there's usually a request or a demand. There's usually a request or a demand. When we are requested to do something, we have a choice to say no or yes, or a counter offer. I can do something different or sometime later. But when there's a demand for us to do something and we don't have a choice, it usually leads to some sort of bad result. The change and the action and the result is usually not sustainable. So we want to watch that sometimes our requests are disguised as our demands are disguised as requests. They're not really a request, they just look like it. I need you to wash the dishes, or I need you to fix the car by 2 p.m. That's not a request. A request could be, hey, Indrajit, would you be willing to fix the car for me by 2 p.m. today? And then we expect Indrajit to say, yes, of course. And sometimes we say yes, but we really mean no, because we're not accustomed to telling the truth. We sometimes tell white lies so that we don't cause conflict, so that we don't cause disappointment. And later on, when the complaint comes later on, we're distraught. Why is this person complaining? And then we don't listen to the complaint. So imagine that somebody comes to us and says, I've got, a problem. And imagine that the listener, the committed listener, sits down and actually takes out a pen and a paper and says, yes, tell me about what your problem is. And then there's a list of complaints. You're not working effectively at home, you're not looking after the kids, you're not looking after your dad, you're always sleeping, you're not paying attention, you're not related to anybody in the family. What you can do is actually make a list and write down exactly what the complainer has said. But what we tend to do is we start giving solutions to the problems straight away. We say, oh, I didn't do that. Oh, that's not really true. We start arguing and debating and proving that we were right. And that's where the problem starts, because conflict resolution, conflict management requires powerful listening. All you have to do is listen to the complaint and give it existence on paper. Once it has existence on the paper, it's almost disappeared. Suninge, dukh, paap ka naas. Listening eradicates pain and suffering. And so once we've written the list down, we can relay it back to that person and say, are these your complaints? And then you can say, okay, I've made a note of these. Thank you very much. Let me have a think about this and come back to you. And I'll come back to you by 2 p.m. tomorrow. Would that be okay? And we found that usually once the complaints have been heard, the complaints actually dissipate and evaporate because they've been heard. And yes, of course, there need to be action. There needs to be a solution. But sometimes the listener doesn't even have to come back with a solution, because just on listening and giving it existence, it's left the head of the person whose complaint it was. Now, whenever there's a request for an action, we can either take accountability or not take accountability. If somebody takes accountability for an action that's needed, like washing the dishes, looking after the kids, vacuum cleaning the house, well, the risk is that when we take accountability for something and make a promise and commit to something, a blame and a complaint is in the pipeline. Therefore, usually what we humans do is we say it's best not to be accountable. And when nobody's accountable for an action, powerful leadership is missing. Nobody's going to really, it's no one's baby. No one does the vacuum. No one does the cleaning. No one fixes the car. So it's inevitable that there is a risk involved in complaining. If we are blocked from giving and receiving complaints, suffering and failure will get worse. So what is the solution to this? What if humans had the ability to express disappointment without making others wrong and make an honest request? Therefore, conflict can be resolved or managed, and there's a possible win-win. Now, imagine that we are at the center of ourselves. We are at our center. We are whole and complete. And if we are whole and complete, we have the ability to take complaints and listen to them. But if we don't like to be made wrong and fingers pointed at us, we will have a badge on our lapel that says, "Do not complain here, go somewhere else." And if that happens in a family where nobody can listen to complaints, then mental health breakdowns will happen because no one's listening. No one can sit down and have a cup of tea and say, what's going on? So this is where we're at. And we've got about 10, 12 minutes left on this call. I want to open up what's available here to yourself. What are you hearing? What's possible? What are the solutions and strategies that you've experienced in your life? What are the tools of coach mentoring that are available to us for this? Anybody want to come on?
Yes, I'd like to say something, please. I'd just like to say that I think before, in a household, before we even get a complaint, we're already waiting for it. We're very defensive. So if we take the dishes for an example, if they're not done, as soon as somebody walks into, we might say, "Oh, I've had to do this. This has happened." We've already used all the excuses to somebody to explain to them what's gone on through the day before they even make the complaint, because we're already expecting it. And I think before we can change that in a household, we have to look at getting rid of the defensive before you can accept the complaint. And just from my personal experience, I think that when you get the complaint, I realised about complaints, and my plan was that I accepted it, and I agreed, and I took this complaint. But I still found that although I said, "Yes, thank you, I hear that," I still had an excuse. So I still followed it by, "But this happened and that happened." And I think it's a big struggle to actually change your whole way of thinking and talking to get rid of that. And I think once you can do it, it does take the conflict away totally, because you can't have conflict if you have accepted it and you've heard somebody's complaint and basically you agree with them, that you've heard it and you understand. But it's just that difficult part of getting past, "I'm sorry, I hear your complaint, but," if you can get past that, then you can deal with everything else.
Oh, fantastic. So, Nita, what you're suggesting there is in our language and in the way we speak, we have to watch words like but. You know, it's like Saturday is an ideal day for doing this, but for me, Friday is better. What if you could say Saturday is an ideal day for doing this, and Friday is also, you know, good? Because that validates both options. Yeah, we can choose pizza, but, you know, Chinese would be better. What if you could say we can choose pizza and Chinese is also another option? We don't want to invalidate someone else's choices, you know? So the language which we use is very important to resolve and receive complaints in a way that's powerful. Okay, thank you very much. There's a little bit of background noise from someone's phone there. So if you can press *6 on your landline, it will mute your phone, or just press mute on your phone so that we can't hear the background sound. Thank you very much. Perfect. Anybody else want to share? What are you hearing?
I'd like to, mine's not really a solution, it's more of a question.
Yeah.
We're talking about sort of complaints and somebody listening to a complaint, but what if somebody is not listening to what you're saying and then that becomes a complaint, but that complaint is not being heard? What do you do in a situation like that?
Okay, so what you're saying is, imagine that you're making a complaint to a friend at work, okay?
Yeah.
And that friend at work is not listening to your complaint?
Yeah, argument's sake, like let's say if I say, you know, please can you do this, you know, whatever it may be, and then you sort of, and it's not, you know, give it a couple of days and it's not done, and then you say again, please can you do this, or this is what I would like, you know. But when you're not heard, when you know, when you're totally sort of...
Okay, yeah. So imagine that you requested twice or three times, and then...
Yeah, even more, yeah.
Your request then turns into a complaint.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I've asked you to do this 4 times now, and why have you not done what I've asked you to do? Because it's now getting critical. Yes?
Yeah.
So you might,
and you don't even get a response or a reaction or an action. You know, when you're just blanked out is the word I was looking for. When you're just blanked out. So you're not even, you know, your question is not, or what you're asking is not even acknowledged. That blank, when you totally blank somebody, what do you do in that situation?
Fantastic scenario. So let's just look at that. In coaching, what we would ask you is, so what's your relationship with this person that you're asking the question to? Because they are not listening to you. And one of the things that all human beings can actually swallow and digest is they are not listening to me. They are not listening to me. And then what's absurd is that when you kind of repeat, they are not listening to me, like a mantra, as if you're doing a rosary bead, a mala, eventually you come to a conclusion that why should they listen to you? Why? If they're not even listening to you, then it's almost like they're not even plugged in. The phone isn't even plugged in. They're not even listening to you. So the first thing you can do is step back and recognize that they are not listening to you, and it's okay that they're not listening to you because there's no relationship. So relatedness is missing such that they are blanking you. There's no relationship for communication to happen. If we're not related to somebody, there's no rapport, then there's nothing to assess and nothing to reframe. The acronym is RAR, RAR. Rapport, assess, reframe. It's a very powerful and very simple conflict resolution tool. If you don't have rapport with somebody and there's a conflict, there's a problem, there's a complaint, you can't assess the conflict, and you definitely can't turn it around and reframe it. So you've got to step back and recognize that there is no rapport. Now, if you go to Tesco and you ask for a product, and the attendant there just blanks you, well, you can't just be satisfied. Well, they don't have any rapport with me. That's why they're not hearing what I'm asking. You would complain and say, hey, I've asked for this item and you're not even listening to me, and that's okay. And hopefully they'll then hear you and they can do something about it. A lot of people would turn their face away and walk away and never come back to Tesco again. In your case, at work, when you're asking the question, it's also possible that the way that you're asking it is not their way of listening. So you could be saying, hey, I really need you to do something for me by 2:00 today. And the moment you say need, it's like forcing an outcome. What if you change that to, I wonder if you would be willing to do something for me. It would really, I would really appreciate it. And then once they've said yes to you, yes, I accept your request, 2:00, I'll get it done, or they accept your request, you can then say, by when can I come back to you to check if that's on time? And is it okay if I come back to you and support you to make sure that gets done? And but you can't ask questions like that to people if there's no relatedness or rapport with them. Mm-hmm. Now, in Sikhi, what we do is we stand for Sarbat Dapala, win-win, the well-being and Chaddi Kala of all. We don't just stand for someone losing and the other one getting a medal and an award. We stand for everybody gets the gold medal. We stand for all the Badshahs and Rajas come out of Bandi Shore from the prison. Guru took all the kings out with him and to freedom. All of them get filled with light. Now, so when we stand back and we build that rapport with that person, we come from that person being positive and being a good person that can get the job done. But if we're already always listening of that person, if that person's an idiot, they're never going to get the job done. We're actually causing them not to get the job done and causing them to fail because we don't believe in them anyway. So whenever a breakdown like that, we can stand back and take accountability and responsibility for why the action didn't get done. And you always have to look at who is accountable. Is it you or is it that other person? If it's you that's still accountable, then it's up to you that the job got done, not up to that person because it's not their baby. Like that. And so there's a lot of information on conflict resolution in coach mentoring, and we will share that in a workshop. And in fact, on the 27th of this month, Sunday, at Urban Workspace, we will have that workshop. You're welcome to come along and look at the details there. What's your feedback on that? Anything else? Anybody else? Then we'll go ahead if there's any feedback on what you're hearing.
No, that was good. Thank you. Yeah.
It's brilliant. So instead of getting triggered, and notice what your triggers are, when something doesn't get done, human beings get triggered very easily. And when we get triggered because somebody lied, somebody didn't tell the truth, or somebody deceived us, we sometimes get made wrong ourselves. But what if we're already wrong? What if we've already declared, "मैं पापी हूं, I'm full of flaws. But when somebody tells us you have a flaw in you, we're not going to shout and scream at them and say, how dare you tell me I've got flaws. We will say, you're right. So, example of the 5 complaints that the husband or the father-in-law or the mother-in-law might make to a daughter-in-law: you're not doing the housework, you're not looking after the kids, you're always sleeping, you're not paying attention, you don't have any relationship with anyone at the house. The daughter-in-law could say, yes, you are right, 5 times, yes, 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 yes. And the daughter-in-law could actually say, Sat Bachan, I will look at this and I will work on it. But the or the father-in-law or the son, whoever gets these kinds of complaints, the daughter-in-law could get triggered because she is not at home with herself. She's unhappy. There's no rapport. She's not really found her higher self. And if she found her higher self, she's not whole and complete, then of course she's going to say, no, it's not my fault. You don't understand what I've been through, etc. So our invitation is consider saying yes to the complaint. Yes, okay, you might be right. Yes, I'm always late for getting to work. Yes, okay, I'll have a look at that. I agree with you. Even though we haven't been late, we can still say, yes, let me have a look at that. And that's called Satabachan. That ability to be able to almost like apologize even when we haven't done anything wrong. Even when we were not the perpetrators, we can say, I'm very sorry that you're feeling like this. Maybe the only thing that you need to say is, I'm really sorry that you're feeling like this, to a complaint, and the complaint's gone. That's all it takes. But we don't like people blaming us. We have no muscle in receiving complaints and blames and conflict. We hate conflict. We don't like people to get upset or even raise their voice at us. We have no ability to deal with that. And in Sikhi, the Satgurus went and got martyred and walked to their martyrdom. They walked into the war zone. They walked into the conflict and got beheaded and martyred, burnt alive, all those things, and they did it out of their choice. They could easily have taken the shortcut. They could easily have played small like that. Okay, I think we've got about 5 minutes left to end this call. Any other feedback? What are people hearing? Go ahead. And please complain if you want to. Go ahead. Anybody else want to share their thoughts here? Okay, very good. I think in that case we can wrap the call up here. I want to end with a short piece from Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Baba Bhagat Kabir Ji, there's a lot of background sound from someone's phone, so please either press mute or *6 to mute your phone. Bhagat Kabir Ji says, Sut aprad kart hai jete, janani preet na raakte. So the son makes so many mistakes, but the mother always forgives him. The little daughter makes so many mistakes, and the mother always forgives their children. Ra maiya, aun barak tera, tahe na khandas avgud mera. And so, Bhagat Ji says, Ra maiya, God, I am your son, I am your child. Why do you forgive my flaws and my inadequacy? Kahe na khandas avgud mera, je at krop kare kartaya, ta pichi na rakh samaya. Even if the child is full of anger, even then the parent forgives the child. Tapi cheet na rakas maya. Chint pavan man paryo hamara. So chint means anxiety, mental health breakdown. Chint pavan man paryo hamara. Even when my mind is intoxicated with anxiety and fear and phobia, Naam bina kaise utras para. That if you don't have access and connection with Naam or your higher self, Shabad Guru, if you're not connected to your higher self, therefore making yourself whole and complete, then how do your ship come to the shore? From the whirlwind and from the pachal and from the tsunami in the middle of the ocean. How will you come to shore? Right? Naam bina kaise utras para, dehe bimal mat sada sarira, sahaj sahaj gun rave kabira. Dehe bimal mat sada sarira. So give my body the wisdom, sahaj sahaj gun rave kabira, such that I can find my higher self, and slowly, sahaj, eventually, in the peace and harmony, guna, are the values, rave kabira, that I may recognize my higher self and my higher values. In our efforts in Sikh coaching, we want people to recognize their core values. What do they value? And then know the family's core values as well. Recognize your triggers and recognize other people's triggers as well. So we welcome you and we invite you to our workshop at Urban World on the 27th, Sunday, 27th of November at 1 p.m. It'll be an amazing workshop, and we look at the subject of abandonment. That when we abandon our family, our team, our work, our friends, our marriage, when we abandon the people in our lives, what are the outcomes and what is the resolution? Well, thank you very much for joining us on this call. We'll give your feedback if you can on Facebook, on Indiegogo Facebook, and on Sikh Coaching Facebook, and on Twitter as well. Or text us and WhatsApp us your feedback and what are the solutions that you have. Enjoy the Gurpurab tomorrow, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Gurpurab. Vadaiyan sareyan nu bahut. Thank you very much for joining our call. Have a good night. Best wishes. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you.